I have seen 1,000 dogs afraid of the dark, but I never saw one afraid to close his eyes.
His knees would buckle from the weight of pure exhaustion, yet he forced himself back up to stand. I watched him from the shadows of the hallway, wondering what kind of ghost he was fighting off. The sleep was pulling at him like a heavy tide, but he shook his head to keep the watch going. The softest bed we had lay empty in the corner, rejected like it was made of broken glass. The clock on the wall ticked past the midnight hour, marking another night he refused to rest. His ribs were heaving with the effort to stay vertical, a soldier who would not leave his post. I knew that if he did not lie down very soon, his loyal heart was going to give out on him.
He was guarding something that I could not see, waiting for a command that was not coming.
This ranch was built for the broken ones, the working dogs who forgot how to just be dogs.
I spent 20 years as a handler, learning the language of ears and tails and quiet growls.
I thought I had seen every kind of trauma a dog could carry home from the front lines.
Then Maria handed me a file that was thinner than any medical record I had ever held.
No name, no history, just a single note saying he was found standing guard on a highway. We named him Sergeant because he held himself with the stiff dignity of an old soldier.
Most rescue dogs bark or cower, but Sergeant just scanned the fence line like it was a perimeter. I watched him for 3 hours straight, waiting for him to settle, but he never dropped his guard.
He was looking for someone specific, and he was terrified of what would happen if he missed them.
I decided to go in, moving slow so he wouldn't think I was a threat to his mission. He didn't growl or bare his teeth, he just stiffened up like a statue made of stone. I sat down on the cold concrete, keeping my distance to show him some basic respect.
But he looked right through me, his eyes locked on the heavy metal door behind my back.
It wasn't the look of a lost dog. It was the 1,000-yard stare of a soldier on watch.
I slid a fresh bowl of water across the floor, hoping to break his concentration. He stepped right over it without blinking, as if drinking was a dereliction of duty. He treated me like a civilian who had wandered onto a battlefield by mistake.
He was waiting for a specific order, and until he heard it, he was not going to rest.
I brought in the orthopedic bed, thick memory foam designed for aching joints. But he looked at the comfort like it was a trap, backing away to the hard floor. I thought the lights might be keeping him alert, so I turned the dimmer down low. But the darkness only made him pace faster, as if he had to work harder to see.
I tried playing soft classical music, the kind that usually calms the rescues.
He shook his head violently, like the melody was interfering with a signal.
Every trick I had learned in 20 years was failing right in front of my eyes. His body was screaming for sleep, swaying like a tree about to fall in a storm.
This was not insomnia. This was a soldier refusing to abandon his post.
He was fighting a war that only he could see, and he was losing the battle.
The first 12 hours were hard to watch, but the next 24 were agony.
At hour 12, he stopped his pacing and leaned his heavy shoulder on the wall.
His hind legs began to tremble, a constant rhythm of pure muscle failure.
I stayed right there with him, watching the sun fade into the gray light of dawn.
By hour 36, the whites of his eyes were red, mapped with broken vessels. He would drift for a second, then catch himself just before he hit the ground.
His breathing turned shallow and fast, his heart working double time to keep going. Maria came in to check the logs, and her face went pale when she saw him. He wasn't really seeing us anymore. He was staring at a memory of his duty.
He was literally standing himself to death right here in front of my eyes.
Maria brought a stethoscope, but we couldn't get close enough to listen to his heart. We didn't need a machine to know that his pulse was racing like a runaway train. I called our lead veterinarian, describing the symptoms and the hours awake. The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I feared was true. His heart was under massive strain, pumping adrenaline into an exhausted engine. She gave us a hard deadline, 12 more hours before his body would simply shut down.
Sedating him was too risk. With his heart rate this high, he might never wake up.
Biology was trying to save him, but his loyalty was killing him by the minute.
There was no medical fix for this. I had to find the switch in his mind.
I walked back in, not as a warden or a doctor, but as another old soldier. I pulled a chair to the window and sat, facing the dark, taking up the watch myself. Sergeant stopped his pacing, confused why I wasn't pleading with him to go to sleep. I scanned the fence line with him, letting him know that I saw the threats out there too. He took a slow step closer, realizing I wasn't there to dismiss his duty, but to share it. For the first time in 2 days, he wasn't carrying the weight of the night all by himself. I whispered that the perimeter was secure, speaking the language he knew best.
His ears swiveled toward me, checking my breathing, measuring my calm against his.
He didn't lie down, but he leaned his tired shoulder just an inch closer to my leg. It was a small surrender, a tiny bridge built across the silence between us. I slowly moved my hand up his neck, waiting for him to pull away from the touch. But he stayed right there, letting me stroke the coarse fur around his tense shoulders. That is when my fingers brushed against the collar, feeling something hard and strange. It wasn't just a normal nylon strap. There was a lump taped tight against the throat. I leaned in closer to look, seeing thick layers of black electrical tape wrapped around. It looked like a field repair, a soldier's way of keeping a metal tag silent. But when I touched it, I felt a square shape hidden underneath the sticky layers. This wasn't a repair job. It was a hiding place for something he had to keep safe. I knew right then that the answer to his silence was taped right there on his neck. I peeled back the sticky layers, one by one, careful not to damage what was inside. Hidden deep in the center was a tiny memory card, smaller than a fingernail. It was a message in a bottle, left by a man who knew he might not come back. I slotted it into my laptop, my hands shaking just a little as I clicked play.
A single audio file popped up on the screen. No name, no date, just a voice recording.
The moment the voice spoke, Sargent froze. He knew that sound better than his own heartbeat. It was a young man's voice, trembling with the rush of a sudden deployment order.
He said, "They're sending me out tonight, buddy. I can't take you where I'm going."
He apologized for leaving him behind, his voice breaking on the edge of tears. Then came the final order, the one he had recorded to save his best friend's life.
He said, clear as day, "Sergeant, stand down. Mission complete. You are off duty now."
The words hit him like a physical weight, breaking the invisible chain holding him up. He didn't fight the gravity this time. His legs folded underneath him in slow motion.
He hit the concrete floor with a heavy sigh, the long watch finally coming to a reorganization.
His eyes snapped shut before his head even settled, pulled under by days of lost sleep. I covered him with his own blanket, guarding him while he drifted into the dark. He twitched and whimpered, chasing phantoms in his dreams, but he stayed down on the floor. When he finally blinked awake hours later, I had a warm rotisserie chicken ready. He didn't gulp it down. He took it from my hand with the gentleness of a lamb. He looked at me, then at the empty door, and finally rested his chin on his paws. I ran the serial number from the file against the public military records.
It confirmed a sudden overseas deployment, indefinite and immediate.
He made the hardest choice a soldier makes, leaving his partner behind to keep him safe. Sergeant didn't just need a shelter, he needed a new commanding officer.
Maria brought the transfer papers in, but she didn't put them in the file cabinet.
I picked up the pen and wrote my own name on the line where the owner belongs.
She didn't say a word, and she just smiled like she knew this was the plan all along.
I packed up the laptop and the memory card, keeping his brave history safe.
I walked to the gate and gave him his new mission. "Sergeant, let's go home."
He walked out that door with his head held high, ready for his new assignment. It has been 3 months, and he has learned that not every sound is a threat.
He still checks the perimeter once a day, just to make sure our home is safe.
But that heavy taped collar hangs on the wall, a retired relic of his past war.
The nightmares still come sometimes, dragging him back to the sand and the loud noise. But when he wakes up shaking, I am right there to remind him he is home now.
He finally knows that he doesn't have to carry the weight of the world alone.
Thousands of military and veteran pets need temporary fosters during deployment.
Support the organizations that keep these families together while they serve us.
Because every old soldier deserves a soft place to finally lay down his head.